Hi, I'm Robyn Barton, shareholder here at LBMC, and I lead our HITRUST practice. I'm joined by
Jesse Goodale. I'm the senior manager here at LBMC.
We're from LBMC, a professional services firm with one of the oldest continuous HITRUST service offerings. LBMC is a HITRUST thought leader, and two of us serve on the HITRUST Assessor Council. Today, let's talk about the key changes to the HITRUST framework and how those can have an impact on your overall strategy and also potentially make HITRUST accessible to organizations who previously did not consider HITRUST.
So the key message from today's webinar is that HITRUST has issued several key advisories which may merit for your organization to revisit its strategy in the following areas: your path to certification, maintenance of your certifications, the type selection, scoping of assessments, and the level of effort and next steps. For starters, we need to frame our conversation in the fundamentals of the most recent set of changes. Robyn, talk to me about some of the recently established changes.
Yeah, absolutely. As we all know, in 2022, HITRUST introduced the I-1 certification. That was meant to provide a moderate level of assurance for organizations that hadn't previously done or wanted lower assurance than the R2. As we all know, R2 is the gold standard of HITRUST certification, the original certification, and offers the highest level of assurance. They introduced last year the I-1 certification. With that success of the I-1, they have now introduced the E-1 certification. This is a cyber hygiene assessment. It's really meant for organizations that need that lower level of assurance. This can serve as a stepping stone for the more robust I-1 or even more robust R2 assessments. It consists of 44 baseline requirements, focuses only on implementation, and can carve out control requirements. The second big change is really reorienting these certifications to be fully traversable. What this means is that each of these progressively build on one another. In addition, they introduced the rapid recertification option for an I-1. This has great potential to expedite the renewal process for customers. Combined, all of these changes could have a significant impact on an organization's HITRUST approach.
So would it be fair to say that the E1 certification is meant for companies early on in their HITRUST journey, those who may not have a HITRUST client requirement right now for certification?
That's right. Yeah, so a key feature of this methodology is, again, that each of these certifications builds off of each other. Any preparation or corrective actions that are taken as part of an E1 assessment helps prepare an organization that much more for the I-1 and the R2. The E1 is a great place to start if you have no prior experience with HITRUST or if you've just recently had significant improvements to your cybersecurity posture and want a way to demonstrate that.
We're providing a summary of each type of certification. Specifically for the E1, are there any other use cases?
Yeah, absolutely. So this slide here really shows and highlights the similarities and differences between the three, so we can kind of see how each one of them increases in level of difficulty. I see the E1 serving a few different purposes. It can be an organization's final goal, right? Like, this is all we need is this low level of assurance. They stop at the E1 assessment. They can also use this. This is a really great way for vendors to provide assurance as part of their third-party risk assessment process, either by providing this to businesses that they work with to demonstrate their own cyber hygiene and overall cybersecurity posture, but also to require vendors in their downstream process to achieve an E1 certification and provide the results back to them. This is helpful in scenarios where both parties are HITRUST certified, and therefore you don't really have to crosswalk controls from one framework to the other. Finally, as we've said before, the E1 can be used as that stepping stone. You start with the E1 and then step from there to the I-1 or the R2.
So Robyn, are there any other major changes for this year?
Yeah, the first is the threat adaptive approach. With version 11, HITRUST is now reviewing the threat landscape and making changes to these frameworks over time. This helps them maintain their core control set and helps adapt controls to what is perceived as the highest risk in the existing threat landscape. Additionally, there's the rapid certification. rapid recertification option that we just talked about. So for those I-1 assessments that were done on version 11, in the second year, an organization can take advantage of the rapid recertification to have a smoother, less effort renewal process if they meet specific criteria.
Robyn, would it be fair to say that knowing why you are looking to be certified is the most important aspect? From what I've seen, our clients typically certify for the following reasons: their clients' requirements, good practice, and then also regulatory factors.
Yes, as there are even more paths for certification, there is a greater need to understand the HITRUST process and be educated so that you can appropriately select a long-term strategy. I tend to think about 5 factors. The first one, you alluded to it. Why are we doing it? Client contractual requirements are the most common reason that we see. Are you currently contracted to maintain HITRUST certification? 2 years ago, certification only meant one thing. Now, with all 3 options, it will be important to ensure acceptance of the E1 or the I1 should you choose one of those over the traditional R2. Second is timing. For organizations that are just beginning their journey, one can anticipate that there will be time needed for readiness work, for remediation, time for those newly implemented controls to operate. Because the I1 has less requirements than the R2, along with that focus only on implementation, that typically means a quicker path to certification. Same concept applies for the new E1, right? It's even quicker path due to less requirements. Third is effort. Similar to timing, less to do equates to less effort. Now, it's important to keep in mind that the E1 and the I1 are both 1-year certifications compared to the R2, which is a 2-year certification. So when we think of effort, we do want to make sure that we're thinking about what that year 2 effort looks like as well. And then there's budget. Initial costs for the E1 are going to be the lowest, followed by the I1, and greatest for the R2. Cost is going to tie to the level of requirements. Again, given the need to reperform it in year 2 for the E1 and the I1, we want to make sure that when you're comparing and thinking through costs, that you're really thinking through a 2-year cycle to really get a great comparison. And finally, consistency. The R2 assessment is a customized assessment that ties to an organization's risk level. This introduces variability. Increased complexity of an environment equals increased level of inherent risk, which may require a higher level of control to manage those risks to an acceptable level. For example, an organization picks up a new client and increases the record count from 5 million to 15 million. That scoping factor related to the count of the number of records is going to change. When that scoping factor changes, there will be additional requirements that are added to the assessment. The number of requirements in the E1 and the I1, however, are static and set. To summarize, those are the 5 key factors that I consider when I'm working with someone to figure out what option is best for them. There are others depending on the organization, and I always recommend you speak with an authorized external assessor organization to go over options in detail.
Well, Robyn, this has certainly been insightful. It seems like these changes mean our clients will have more options to certification and additional efficiencies, all of which depend on a well-laid strategy. If you, the listener, have any additional questions, do not hesitate to reach out for more information.